Welcome to the Fiscally Awesome Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Gardner, co-founder and CEO of Hiline. Today on the podcast, we have Alethea Hannemann, co-founder and CEO of Board.dev. We got an awesome conversation where Alethea is going to drop some knowledge on how important it is to attract technology talent to your board of directors as a nonprofit organization. So let's get into it. Okay, Alethea, welcome to the Fiscally Awesome Podcast. Thanks for spending time with us today.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so before we get into it, maybe we can just set a little bit of context, a little bit of a background about yourself and Board.dev and how you got started and what Board.dev's all about.
Excellent. So Board.dev is a social enterprise that strengthens nonprofits by building tech-savvy boards. So we do two things mainly. We train all board members everywhere to be baseline fluent in things like AI and cybersecurity and digital risk. These are really the new table stakes for governance and need to be at the board level. And number two, we place disruption skilled leaders who are often senior tech executives on boards where they can help drive transformation. And I say disruption skilled because this is about the transformation side of technology, not necessarily getting an IT team on your board. And for the companies we partner with to find and place that talent, it's a next-gen leadership development lab. So their people are really building some core AI and strategy skills while making nonprofits stronger. And I got into this, my background is in nonprofit consulting and capacity building. Got into this because I had a really compelling experience with my own board when I was running a nonprofit, running the operations for a big food insecurity organization in New York that served 10,000 people a week across all 5 boroughs. Crazy tech stack, really immense complexity there. And I was lucky enough to have a board member from Morgan Stanley, someone who came on board as, frankly, my own personal coach and board member to help me sort through all of those challenges. And she was able to help figure out the 100 things that were on my desk related to technology. What were the top 3 that we needed to handle? How might I talk about those things to the rest of my executive team and the rest of the board to make sure they were on target? And how did we make sure, most importantly, that those tech changes were really financially sound and sustainable? I've lived it. I've served boards, I've served on boards, and I know how important it is to have that technology knowledge at the board level.
Why found Board.dev? What was like the moment you're like, I got to go help more people do more of what I just experienced?
Yeah, just knowing some of the key facts about what is happening in the sector or what nonprofits are challenged with sometimes in terms of both leadership and technology. So nonprofits are 4 times more likely to achieve their missions if they're tech savvy, but most of them are spending no more than a third what a similarly sized for-profit organization will be spending on technology. And they also don't tend to have that tech expertise at the board level. So they're often just not having those conversations. It's really important for boards to have finance people and legal people, but now tech is just as important and just as core to governance as finance. So it seems like a real gap and one that Board.dev was well positioned to fill. We needed someone to get all of that amazing talent in the private sector to nonprofits on their boards and helping them drive digital transformation.
I love that because, first of all, I don't think you can separate finance and legal from tech anymore because I think they've stitched together that like they don't really work without each other or they shouldn't work without each other anymore.
Yeah.
But the concept of capacity building has been around for so long and you hear nonprofits talk about it all the time, but not practice building capacity through technology. I think it's a capabilities thing. I just don't think they know how to do it. And I can say we work with hundreds of nonprofits right now at Hiline, and we see a lot of boards that are well-intentioned, but don't necessarily have the experience that you're describing. They're not aware that they don't have the capabilities either because they're giving their time. I've always heard it's like the 3 T's, time, talent, treasure, ways that you give to a nonprofit organization. But I do think you got to have this core technology muscle on your board. What patterns do you see in nonprofit board composition that kind of limits their organizational effectiveness?
Yeah, this is a great couple questions. We work with nonprofits of all sizes. I will say that. Typically, the organization that's coming to us has between, say, $500,000 and $10 million in an operating budget. Although we find that organizations that are much smaller, but just are moving more quickly or are digitally savvy in some ways already, are really eager to have more tech fluency at their board level so they can move faster. And likewise, larger ones, even if they have large tech teams, sometimes that increases the need for coordination at the board level because there's a lot more to explain. So that's about the same size. And that tends to be who you're working with as well, right?
We're perfectly aligned. That's the
Yeah.
same range we love to work with.
Yeah. It's like they have enough complexity to need something about this in their governance model, but they're not so large that the board is serving a different function. And I think when you asked about challenges in board composition, I think you nailed it when you said not everyone needs to be a tech expert. The thing that works really well is when all of the board members have some base level of fluency. They understand what the key concepts are for this organization, like what's most material tends to be data risk, cybersecurity, and right now AI. So everybody needs to be able to talk about that and how it's relevant to the mission of the organization. And then it's often a really good idea to have someone who is more specialist and can bring a deeper tech lens. They can help you do things, sort through vendor decisions and talk about the kind of visionary aspects of the tech you might be implementing and really just push the conversations in a new direction. But that base level of fluency is most important.
Yeah, and it's not like someone to help you with IT. It's not figuring out the basic stuff. It's help us think about how to wire in the business to be modern and
Yeah.
run super efficiently.
Yeah, you nailed it again. Oftentimes, boards and organizations, frankly, will think of tech as a back office thing rather than a mission driver. And the important things to be talking about at the board level are where does your technology and your approach intersect with things like your mission and values or your strategy? These days, tech strategy really is core strategy, no matter how small you are. The choices you make really matter. You don't want your board to look like your IT team.
Yep. And I think it's hard. So for the nonprofits in both of our ICPs, I would say 5 to 10 million. If you get over 5 million, I think it's a little easier to get and recruit into the board. But when you're smaller, it can be harder. And I think sometimes you tend to see the same types of personas being recruited to the board and the same companies stay involved, but the new roll on. And it just becomes like you're on a hamster wheel and
Yeah.
nobody's really driving the innovation conversation.
Yeah. And that phrase is right on the innovation conversation. And frankly, what is the disruption we need to think about right now? It's an interesting moment, particularly with AI. It's an interesting moment because almost everyone is in a learning posture.
Yep.
There are a few people who can confidently say, I'm an expert and I know all of the steps that I would take. And
You're an expert, but nobody's an expert.
exactly.
They
Everyone's an
haven't come up.
expert, but no one's really an expert. And so you've got the CEO bringing up topics that they may not be comfortable with, and a board engaging in topics that they may not yet be comfortable with. And so the key is to get them to be comfortable and to really anchor on the things that matter at that level. And again, that tends to be like, how do our values play into the tech decisions that we're making? I'll give you an example. Most organizations are considering using AI tools in order to slim down their back office operations, right? And think about efficiency in addition to program effectiveness. But those decisions are going to have implications for your staff in the future. And that's something that your board should be thinking about. Your board should be thinking about how to resource the team to make sure that everybody is up to speed on the new tools that you're going to be implementing and make sure they have the support they need to really execute on this wisely. And then when you start doing things like implementing AI or maybe using a tool for something that you used to do manually, that also has community implications. And you need to think about what the perception is. How will you establish that you are safe and secure to the people who are using your services? So there's just a lot of implications that roll out from what seems like a simple tool choice. It's not back office anymore. Every tech decision really reflects on you as an organization out in the community.
Yep. So can we talk about the ideal person to fill this role on a board? Because I think it's more common to see from the professional services side or the banking institutional side, you're going to get that type of talent, which is important, but
Yeah.
you're not going to get this expertise from somebody like that. Are you looking for a tech founder in your community they're just going to come at this from a very different place, like a little disruptive, probably ruffle a couple feathers, but they're going to do it for the greater good of the organization? Is that who we're looking for?
It is. It's interesting. You mentioned professional services. And I think actually that's always a great model for nonprofit boards because they come at things with a problem solution mindset and have a great
Yep.
network. So that applies here Two, to get nonprofit CEOs comfortable with the sort of archetypes, the personas they might see, we sometimes talk about it in three buckets:
Mm,
CIO type,
yeah.
CTO type, and product type. That's relevant to some organizations. They might have a very external facing tech strategy, meaning they're delivering online training to students across the country, for example. And then maybe you want a product type person, or maybe you want a CIO type who's going to make sure that all of that data that you're processing with students is really safe and secure. Or you might want a CTO type who is more of a generalist. So we talk about these archetypes just to get folks comfortable with who they might encounter in the
Hmm.
field. But in general, it is going to be someone who has that problem solution mindset. They're not going to come in pushing a particular tool at you. They're going to really try to listen and understand where your challenges are and your opportunities as well. Someone who is deeply networked, that can be just really helpful because, again, you're not hiring a tech consultant to fix a particular thing. So you're not looking for a particular skill set. You want someone who knows how to ask the right questions and then help you figure out the answers. And ideally, there's someone who can really help open doors to potential funding or partnerships, pro bono resources. Say you want to bring on a really sharp new tool, but you don't necessarily have the in-house team to do it. Pro bono can help you make that happen.
Yeah. Do you think, because grassroots organizations are always looking for folks that are going to get involved, but even for some of the bigger ones, because this is such a new muscle, like, do you
Yeah.
find that hands-on keyboards type support is useful to help get them started, or is it more strategic direction and vision?
Preference and need probably would be two
Yeah.
different things. And you probably see that too. I think everyone, look, I'm running a small organization too. I'm always like, hands on, who's going to do the thing? Bring me the person who's going to
It's
do the
great.
thing.
Yep.
And in reality, that ability to helicopter up and help you see a little bit further out on the horizon is probably the thing I would suggest first for most organizations. And I say that because that person who's helicoptered up can help you get a hands on the keyboard person, right? But
Yep.
you need someone who's going to be able to see more than one or two plays down the line. I'll give you an example of one case study that we've got on our site that I'm a big fan of. There's an organization called Finca International, and they do microfinance and financial education all over the world. Use a ton of data. They have programs, but they're programs that were aligned around a mission, but were executed in very different ways. They got a really amazing opportunity to partner with a large tech company for some AI and data processing resources. A board member who was really skilled in this area, she was able to translate between this big tech company and Finca International and say, all right, here are the tools they're offering. Here is what it would mean if you were to take these on. Here's what it would generally take to make sure you were maintaining and supporting these products in the future. Here's how it would change your programs. She was not doing any of the things, but she was helping them make decisions about how to do it and what to do and what to prioritize. So help them make good decisions that didn't get them into, frankly, a worse spot by taking on some tech debt that they couldn't handle.
Yep. Yep. That makes sense. When you're trying to help organizations recruit in somebody like this, is it hard to source this type of talent to a nonprofit board right now?
I love this question because it's a happy answer. Not all
Okay.
answers are happy these days. There are literally hundreds of thousands of folks across the country who have tech skills and tech expertise and are really eager to engage with boards. We know this for a number of reasons. LinkedIn used to have a checkbox on their profiles that said, I'm interested in board service. And there were literally 500,000 people across the country with titles like VP of product and CIO and CTO who had said, I am interested in nonprofit board service. Sadly, LinkedIn took down that checkbox, but we know those people are still there. I also can say we've got 5,000 folks in our community just in the year and a half since we got started. Half of
Wow.
those were tech leaders saying, hey, can you please connect me to a nonprofit? And literally not a week goes by without someone cold pinging me on LinkedIn saying, I have these skills. I've never been able to figure out how to connect with a nonprofit. Can you help me? Because I really want to help drive strategy there.
And it's a crucial time right now for nonprofits for you to be doing this type of work because it's about sustainability right now. Everybody's going through this inflection point where there's uncertainty and funding is in question in certain sectors. And you're just thinking about like, how are we going to do this in the future? It's going to have to look different than it has looked the last 30 years. And I think building efficiency through technology capability inside of nonprofits is going to be probably the best path to sustainability,
Yeah.
honestly. You got to be able to do more with less and get really smart, use your data for good and make better educated decisions. So I
Yeah.
think the work you're doing is like super valuable right now.
And I'm glad you raised that about sustainability. Of course, technology is critical to how nonprofits are going to be both more efficient and more effective. And you pointed it out. It is like Hunger Games out there. It is really
It's
intense for
Hunger
non.
Game.
It is
Yeah.
really, it is a tough time. But being tech savvy can also help you ideally secure more funding from donors and philanthropy, because when you can say to them, look, we've got our data locked up tight, or look, we are using the best tools to manage our finances, that just really reinforces your skill, your capacity, your competence, and the fact that you are aligned on leadership from the top down. It says a lot to both individual donors and the funders that might support you. So it's all good choices to make sure you're tech fluent and can talk about what you're doing in terms of tech.
I agree because there's only so many resources for donors to deploy that then they're going to always have to make investment decisions. Which organization do I think is going to provide the best return? And showing that you're leaning into the future, showing that you have sustainability on your roadmap, you're using technology as part of one of those key capabilities is super important. I love that. Okay. I would love, like, if you bring in a product person, how does that work? Because I think that's like super fascinating because like it would maybe force the nonprofit to actually think about it like a product, which I think they do, but there's a different thought exercise that goes into it if you're talking to a product person.
Yeah. I love product people, by the way. They're some of my favorite people. I've built tech tools at some of the organizations I've been at and relied on some really amazing product teams and external expertise. When you think about programs or operations, a product person can really help you sort out like what the user journey is, whether that's the person you're serving or whether that's your internal team. That's what they do. They think about personas and needs and jobs to be done, and they can help you see where there are gaps, where technology could fill in those gaps or help you take advantage of opportunities. Maybe they can help you serve more people. I know of lots of instances of really critical, like hotline type organizations that have been able to serve 4 times as many people in a month because they instituted smart, high quality chatbots, for example. But you need a product person to be able to guide you to the right opportunities and right implementations.
And I think the best part for me about working with a product person is they start with, tell me why the thing you do is better than the thing everybody else does, and really define what is your service? What am I offering to the community? I think it really helps you get your messaging crisp, which I think is
Yeah.
also really important when you're actually trying to go out and secure donor funding too.
Yeah, exactly. They can talk about the ROI on a particular choice.
Yeah.
And that makes a funder really sit up and listen. I think also, depending on where they sit in their organizations and how big those organizations are, tech people tend to be really good at making cases, making cases for things that are like totally unsexy too, right? Like they can say, we need to have this particular product because it does X. And everyone wants to gloss over, how you're actually producing your financials every month, for example.
Yeah.
And they can make it very compelling for why this thing is as important as creating a new program that's going to have a new offering for the kids you serve, for example.
I love it. Okay. Like I'm going to keep us going. I have more questions, but we can
Sure.
talk maybe on the next episode. We can keep going on this one. So Board.dev driving technology muscle at the board level. And obviously Hiline, like our whole thing is financial operations for nonprofits. So how interconnected do you view those two things right now?
Super interconnected is the answer. We talked about this before. I think in nonprofits, broken technology is going to result in broken financial systems and the reverse, right? So if you've got a lot of manual steps or you've got redundant platforms, if you've got unsecured data, that's going to create financial risk. So when boards are not paying attention to technology, it's undercutting compliance, it's undercutting fundraising, as we said. I feel very strongly that tech and finance are like two sides of the same coin. If you've got strong digital systems, then you are going to have stronger, more accurate financials and better reporting and donor trust, and the reverse as well. And as I said before, every strategy decision these days really is a tech decision, and every tech decision really is a strategy decision. And I think you could substitute finance there too. Every tech decision is a finance decision, and every finance decision is going to involve technology.
100%. We're generally, when we go in to start working with a nonprofit, they usually have somewhere between, I'm going to say 3 to 10 different systems that somehow feed
Yeah.
them giving a financial statement or like an output for the board, which is here's how we're doing. And I think you hit the nail on the head, because if I'm the board and I have a governance responsibility, if the systems aren't wired, if the data is not clean, if it's not making its way into integrated systems, I feel comfortable that I'm getting the right information all the time.
Yeah. If the data isn't clean, if you can't make it visible in the way you need it to be, it's going to undercut everything. First of all, it's going to just make it real slow and hard.
Like 45 days late. I'm looking at July and September in a day's time.
Yeah. And what you're not seeing is like how many hours it took to get to that. I have been at organizations where you'd start planning for the next board meeting the minute you finished one because you knew it was going to take you forever to get there. Yeah. And that lag is terrible, particularly right now. Things don't move at an every 3-month pace. You need financials that are immediate and accurate and that can be verified.
And I think if it's clean, if it's well visualized, if there's a high level of trust that it's right, it's timely, I think that drives board engagement up. Like when the opposite happens and it's late and nobody understands how to read it or is it right, I think you actually drive a lot of disengaged board members that way. It gets
Yeah.
frustrating.
Yeah. Yeah. And having that strong storyline that people who don't have a financial background can follow can just make all of the difference in the quality of the conversations and your agility, your ability to move quickly on opportunities. That's going to become even more important again as the technology and the pace of decision making speeds up. You need an accurate snapshot of where you're at in order to press go on things that are really good for your mission.
When you bring in a new board member, for example, and like technology is the thing, we're going to come in, we're going to make sure technology is front and center. Where's the first place that you tend to find the energy gets focused?
Right now, the first conversation, the sort of door opener for many boards around technology is AI. It is in your face as much as people would like to ignore tech altogether sometimes, just because they're not comfortable with those conversations. AI cannot be ignored. So that's the thing that, again, I called it a door opener because that's the thing that will make boards sit up and listen and they'll start that conversation. The thing that they often then move to, or that we encourage them to move to too, is cybersecurity and data risk. So right now, the nonprofit sector is the second most attacked sector for cyber attacks. So that's number one. It tends to be something that folks are not really interested in talking about, and yet it is critical to funding trust.
What are they going after? Is it like credit card file? Is it like CRM data? What are they actually interested in?
Yeah, so it has to be two things. Number one is that donor data. That's really important. And number two, right now we're seeing a big increase in activist type things. I know an organization that's got a software tool that serves more than 300 small grassroots immigrant serving organizations across the country. And in the past year, they have seen just an immense increase in cyber attacks. You'll see that a lot as well. Save the Children got hacked, right? Save the Children had a
anybody
cyber.
out there trying to hack data from nonprofits, that is just like as low as it gets.
Yeah. Anybody attacking Save the Children is
as low as it gets.
Yeah. And it's a huge industry. It's a $1 trillion industry, I think. So
Huge.
Lots of donor data in there. Yeah.
What about donor data? How often do you go into an organization where that's dialed in? Is it typically not? It's a loaded question because I don't think it typically is, but that seems to be an area where if AI is of interest to the boards, there's a lot you can learn about your donor data as long as it is clean.
As long as it is clean. Exactly. Yeah. There's a number of good case studies about the increase in fundraising that organizations can see when they do start using AI tools with donor data. So that's the positive. There are a number of really good tools for that. It does have to be clean. You have to have good internal systems and just make sure everybody's logging their conversations and all that boring stuff. I will say, though, that's another area when you start doubling down, like that's another area where cyber risk comes up. There's been a number of incidents recently, big organization in Connecticut that just had a big hack. And Blackbaud, one of the biggest nonprofit tools in the business, had a very unfortunate hack that affected, I think, more than 10,000 nonprofits. That's an area where you're going to want to make sure that you are secure in addition to optimizing for all the amazing things you can do in terms of fundraising.
I didn't hear about Blackbaud. It's obviously
Yeah,
very well, like financial ERP for, I would say, lower mid-market type
yeah.
nonprofits.
Yeah. And it's a tool where, so that was, I think, 2022 when they had that hack. I can find that and send that to you. But yeah, it affected like tens of thousands of nonprofits, and hacks happen, right?
Mhm.
They absolutely happen. And what it really raised was not just questions about security of this tool that so many nonprofits use, but also then what is the incident response on those nonprofit side? What was really interesting to us was the boards of those nonprofits who had been compromised in that data breach, many of them had no procedures, no way to deal with the downstream implications of that. So it's not just the vendor that you're choosing, and you can't guarantee that any vendor is going to be secure. But what you can do is prep and make sure that your leadership structures and modalities are ready to handle an incident when they come through.
Man, I still can't get over like hacking children's organizations. Like it's just like beside
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah. It's not one of the happier news points
Yeah.
of my past year.
Okay. Can we maybe just focus on like board governance stuff for a few minutes?
Sure.
Um, on the board oversight side, having tech savvy board members, how do you think that changes the quality of the financial oversight? What are the things they're going to be asking that maybe the other board members have not asked or really they don't know to ask?
So, number one, I think folks who have been involved in tech implementations and who think of tech strategy as core strategy, number one thing they do is they're able to make sure that you're thinking about the technology decisions holistically with the rest of the decisions of the organization, right? So, oftentimes folks will talk about an initiative and then they'll say, okay, what do we need a new system in order to support this? And so you really want to talk about those technology implications from the beginning, not just as sort of an on the end. And tech folks tend to see that picture more fully. They also tend to see the risk picture more fully. You can talk about how exciting this new program is going to be, and then they're going to be able to say, how are we keeping that data safe? What additional overhead is that adding to us? And in terms of what we know about them, they're able to ask good questions like, hey, do we really need to collect this data, or could we do this in a more offline way, for
Yeah.
example? And all of those things have financial implications. I think someone who thinks about tech risk is also going to be really smart about thinking about financial risk. There's no one in a position of leadership in a tech company or in a tech role who has not seen some both really fortunate and really unfortunate financial
Yeah.
results from a tech decision. And that experience is just invaluable.
Yeah. I think technology folks are usually systems level thinkers too. So I can imagine in the first board meeting going through the financials, it's like, where does that number come from? Where does that one come from? What system feeds this number? If nobody knows, I think that's a pretty good indication that we probably need to go understand how all of our data is flowing as an organization, because usually if you don't know, it's an indication it's probably wrong or could be wrong.
I love that. Yeah, tech folks do tend to be systems thinkers and they can see the full picture. And again, they're really good at risk. They're also often really good at policies, which I think is another area of overlap between the two domains. And again, increasingly, funders are going to be asking questions. They all ask questions about your financial controls. They're going to be asking questions about your tech controls too. And so having someone who can bridge those storylines is going to be increasingly important.
Are you seeing interest in donors in supporting technology initiatives as like a first principle?
Yeah, it's all over the place right now, as most of the world
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
I feel like that's my tagline for the year. It's all over the place right now. Until a year ago, I think the figure was like only 20% of grants included any provision for technology. So basically, a nonprofit would apply for a grant, and then any technology they needed to support that initiative or the work that they were doing, they would have to fold it under the rest of the grant. Hopefully, that will change so that funders and donors are saying, okay, here's the work we want you to do. We acknowledge that there's going to be some tech component to it. So hopefully that becomes more of a norm. It actually decreased over the past 4 years, but hopefully we'll go back up again. But then, similar to how we were talking before about AI can be the door opener, a lot of funders are really jazzed about the potential of AI to support nonprofit effectiveness and efficiency, right? So they're pushing that and they're putting out RFPs that are specifically around AI, which is amazing. And I support. The challenge is if most nonprofits don't have the core foundational technology that would enable them to take advantage of AI, we're hitting the starting line a little bit early. So hopefully some of that eagerness translates into backfilling for years of underinvestment in technology.
Right. Those are the problems that we've set out to solve for nonprofits. And
Exactly.
it's like most of the grants that have like G&A carve outs or like G&A allocations, like 10% of the grant they can use for G&A. That doesn't provide for a lot of room to invest in technology. So I would love it if you just carve out like an equal tranche that's technology focused and then G&A focus can go towards the human capital costs that go with administrating
Yes.
the grant. I think that would be incredible. How do we make
Yeah,
that happen?
exactly. How do we make that happen? And you pointed out a really important thing because you don't just buy a tool and then the problem solved, right? You need to have the right leadership and training and process in order to make that technology actually effective. The number of tools that an organization has and is not using is probably quite enormous, even at the smallest
Enormous. Yeah,
size.
even yeah, I agree. There's a lot of low hanging fruit there. I think there's a little bit of effort could buy a lot of capacity for a lot of nonprofit organizations right now.
Yes, exactly. A little bit of effort and a little bit of information and strategy. Because
Yeah,
again, saying no to a tool can be as important and as strategic as saying yes. You need to
100%.
really identify what are the things that are highest priority. And I would say something like Highline, being able to report regularly and with accuracy on your financials is just going to open the door to so many more things.
Very interesting. All right. So we bounced around on a bunch of different things. But I want to try to like put a bow on it and bring it back. Just like practical implementation of this for nonprofits. So any executive director listening today, first steps you can take or what you should be thinking about in terms of strengthening your board's capacity for financial and technology oversight and strategy.
Great. I love this question because I think you can make a lot of progress with some small steps. Number one, just put tech on your board agenda. It doesn't matter whether you are comfortable with it or not, or whether you think the board is eager for it or not, put it on the agenda. We have got some tools on our website at Board.dev to support nonprofit CEOs in doing this. We've got one called the Tech 28 that is there. It's just a list of 28 key questions, not a checklist. You don't have to talk about all 28, just pick one or two. Some are around the board's own comfort with technology, some are around what you might need for staff in the future. So you can use that to get into the conversation and start getting folks comfortable with it. You can also run a quick assessment to check the board's fluency. It might be actually that the board is much more fluent in technology than you think and much more eager to get into the conversation. And yet, because you haven't brought it up, you haven't discovered that. And then number three, I'd say if you can, start thinking about recruiting a tech savvy board member or advisor, someone who could come in and say, okay, here's what I'm seeing are going to be some of the big challenges and opportunities for you in the next, say, year and a half. And here's the expertise you might need to address it. So start talking about it, figure out what your board knows, and then get someone on board who could be your sort of coach and advocate in bringing technology forward.
Yeah, I think what I hear you saying is just have a conversation. Even if you don't know what to say, or if anybody will know how to talk about it, just open the conversation up with your board, talk about it. And if we can't solve for it internally, let's go look externally so that we can embed this into our strategic roadmap for the next 3 to 5 years.
Absolutely. It takes a lot of courage for executive directors to say, I'm not a technologist, and yet we have to be talking about technology. Same thing for a board chair, anybody on the board. And that's why I emphasize we are all in a learning posture right now. Everybody is stepping into this with a little uncertainty.
Yeah, it's just like even a for-profit board, right? Like Highline has a board. Like the board's job is to make sure that we are focused on the right things and asking the right questions and making sure that we're engaging on all the things that really matter in the
Yeah.
long run. And I think that nonprofit boards will engage if given an opportunity to just talk about it and be
Yeah.
vulnerable. Don't have to have the answers, so you got to start the
Yeah.
conversation.
Exactly. 100%. Just get into it.
Just get into it. Okay, let's wrap it up with some rapid fire questions. You want to have a
Let's
little
do
fun?
it. I like rapid fire.
You ready? Okay. Biggest red flag when evaluating a nonprofit board.
If they've never talked about tech, that's, yeah.
Red flag.
Yeah. That's hard. It's just, I can't imagine an organization for which it is not relevant. at this moment, or that has never had a risk or had some opportunity related to technology.
100%. Every organization, for profit or nonprofit, it should be at the center of your
Yes.
conversation right now.
Absolutely. They shouldn't be skipping the others. The finance, the legal, the impact of the program, those are all important too, but technology underlies all of those.
Okay. Number 2, one technology tool every nonprofit board should require their organization to use.
Again, I'm going to cite that figure. Nonprofits, the second most attacked. I think a survey recently said 73 organizations reported a cyber attack in the last 2 years at least. Those are just the ones who knew about the cyber attacks. Like plenty of cyber attacks happen and they did not know. So I would say something security related. And there's some great easy to implement tools out there, and probably our authentication across all accounts. One way to like really step it up. Or so I hear from my security buddies.
Yeah. I don't remember where I read this, but it was a stat that basically half of the small businesses in the country got hacked this year and the other half will get hacked next year. And whether you know it or
Whether
not,
you know it or not.
it's basically
Yeah.
whether you know
Whether
it or
you know
not.
it.
Yeah, I think that's important. And that's easy. That doesn't require tons of sophistication.
It doesn't require
Yeah.
anybody to make a choice. Once it's implemented, everybody's using it. You have no choice. You got to enter that code or you're not getting in. So
Yep.
there you go.
Okay, last one. Worst board meeting you've ever witnessed in one sentence. And then I'm going to ask you why too after.
I think there's some very interesting board meetings. I'm not going to say in what role I was participating on this board meeting, but about the shiny, happy things, right? We all do. So I've seen plenty of time spent on things like tote bags for the gala when you're ignoring a major risk. Someone's trying to sell you on an important operational change and everyone wants to talk the tote bags. That's the kind of thing that drives me really crazy. I'd say the other, like the flip side of that, board meetings where board members get really excited about possibilities. I think we often say the thing that is more challenging for an ED than having a board that is totally not tech fluent is having one that's excited about tech, but not fluent. And I've been in board meetings where folks are talking about like potential products and couldn't you do this? And like, can't you get the seniors on iPads? And the chief program officer is just sitting there knowing that these ideas are not feasible or relevant. So that's where the best of intentions can go awry when there's this amazing energy, but not enough fluency to see what really matches to that organization's needs.
I think that's well said. And again, I agree with you. The tote bag design does not fall to like the governance responsibility of the board. And maybe grassroots boards, it's going to be different because they're doing everything. But I think that's super good. All right. You dropped a lot of good knowledge today that I'm hoping our listeners find really insightful. So if they want to learn more about Board.dev, where can they find out more and how can they find you if they want to reach out?
Excellent. Thanks so much for the conversation. Always love talking with you. I think we've got a lot of the same things on our minds. So definitely go to Board.dev to learn more about what we're doing. Join our community. Follow us on LinkedIn. We've got a lot of resource going out. We do regular webinars. So if you are a tech leader or someone interested in joining a board, we can definitely get you some resources there. If you're a nonprofit leader, we've got excellent stuff to help you start sorting through how to get into technology. So definitely connect with us on LinkedIn, connect with me, Alethea Hannemann on LinkedIn. Always love having great folks on my network. We do placement for our business. Most of that is in partnership with large companies, but I'll tell you, I've got a sort of side business connecting people I know because I just can't stop. I'm like, oh my God, this person would be great for this board. So maybe you'll be the off the side of my desk next placement.
All right. Alethea, thank you for all the work you're doing at Board.dev. And thanks for joining today. A lot of good conversation, and I took a lot of good insights self-personally. So thank you very much for joining. And we will be in touch soon with how we can maybe tap into the synergies together.
Excellent. Thanks so much.
All right. Have a good rest of the day.
You too.
Yeah. All right.